Welcome, everybody. I like to welcome Mr. Adam Bean. It's a pleasure to have you tonight, Adam. Thank you to be with us.
So now, why I'm talking about Helidon and Micronaut data, and this has some story behind, because I have to, what I found out is that Graham Roche is from Oracle, is working on CDI Lite. And I wanted to chat with him, and what I found out that he actually, I forgot about that, created Micronaut. And then we chatted about Micronaut, and then it turned out that the Micronaut is also supported by Oracle, and not only Oracle, by the object computing people, the company behind Micronaut, and lots of external contributors to say, hey, look, interesting. But then another story, right? Another branch of the story. I think 2-3 years ago, I had a chat on DevOps, and before me, Micronaut was introduced with Graham Roche. And everyone was really excited about Micronaut, and people ask me what's my opinion. I say, okay, looks interesting, but the API is completely proprietary. I'm really not interested, to learn something new to save, 10 megs of RAM. So forget it. But now we had a chat, and the AirHacksFM podcast, by the way, with Graham, and he told me that Micronaut actually supports JAX-RS and CDI, parts of CDI, so very, very small parts of CDI. And this made me curious, and I took a look at Micronaut, and what Micronaut does is really interesting, and I would like to show you today what Micronaut does. So this is the first thing. The other thing is, I think 2006, I know in 2005, 2006, I was not happy how my heating control is working. And I wanted to improve, the algorithm. So I hacked that, and I said, okay, but how to control the entire thing? And I said, okay. And back then I knew already Java, but Ruby on Rails was hot. And I said, okay, I would really like to try, with Ruby on Rails. And I tried for three days, and it didn't work. There were small things that, that there was no driver for the database. I couldn't connect via the serial port, and the conventions were strange. Like I remember there was like table, heatings, heating, and the name should be heatings, and I got strange, race errors. Okay, I'm not interested. And then I hacked everything in one day with the EJB3 preview and JBoss, I think 4 or 3. And this was so early, EJB3 days, that even the name was wrong. So it was fixed afterwards. So I did that, but a few weeks later, Grails came out. And Grails was the Groovy and Java answer to Ruby on Rails. And Grails took off back then. And the author of Grails is Graham Roche again. So I took a look at Grails. I had no opportunity. I had no opportunity to work with Grails in real world projects. But I tinkered with it, and I really liked the idea. And what I really like, there was a crazy idea which was impossible in Java right now. Is in Grails, what they did is, you could invoke methods which do not exist. And this was called method missing. So you could call methods like hello world, and what Grails or Groovy would do is, it would just raise exception, or it will redirect the call like a reflection to non-existing method, and you get the information about the method signature, can do something with it. And what Graham did is, it reused the information to create a thing, I believe it was called GORM. And what GORM was is like, you could create just method signatures, and the SQL statements were generated from this information. And then Graham was hired by the Spring people, and introduced, the idea of Grails, and Spring data happened. And then it was more or less fired by the Spring people. And then he started Micronaut with the same idea, and the tool was called Micronaut data. And now, this is what I would like to show you today. So this is a really crazy story. And this Micronaut data is also supported by Helidon. So now we have the entire bridge, right? And what's also fascinating is that the Micronaut was completely different to Helidon and all other projects. So it's a really interesting story. So what I would like to do is what I planned, but this is really crazy. And the chances that it will work is, I would say, almost zero, right? So what I try to do is to show you from scratch first a Micronaut project and explain what happens, why it's so interesting. And then add some Micronaut data just to show the configuration, and then transform everything to Helidon and tell you why I like the combination. Yeah, and hello, Dimitri. So please correct me if I'm wrong. So now, I forgot to introduce myself. So what I usually do right now, I'm multiple concurrent projects. One which has to be completed in the next days or weeks is a backend microprofile, front-end web components, a native application which will run on mobile devices. And I really like microprofile in Jakarta E because of productivity. And I'm working with Java from the beginning, right? And yeah. And so now let's start. So I really enjoy Java, and I mean I really enjoy it. So I hacked today also really early, and there is no reason to do something else. So this is why I always look, at Groovy, at Scala, at Jython, and I say, okay, but my Java is just good enough. So that's the entire story. And Java is getting better and better. And I have to notice somehow Oracle event that I believe that Oracle is somehow a good steward of Java. Lots of stuff happens right now. And we have Java, no frequent releases, and we get Graal VM, which is incredible technology, really. So it's just like unbelievable. By the way, of course, there is an interview with one of the creators with Graal VM on Airhacks FM on the podcast, if you're interested. So I've read a blog, which is more or less at Notepad. So the recent days is a little bit quiet because of the amount of work. Airhacks.com is like workshops on Airport Munich, which are canceled because of obvious reasons. Airhacks Live is the counterpart, which are online workshops, and Airhacks.io are recorded workshops, and Airhacks FM completely free is the podcasts. Now, Micronaut story, agenda point number 1, you got it. Then the micro profile in Jakarta I show you in a second. This is what I believe, very briefly, what's really interesting. And Helidon and Helidon Micronaut. Actually, I would say, instead of Helidon, you saw a lot of Helidon. I would start with Micronaut and then with Helidon. This would be, so I would just flip the order. And if you like, there are still slots free. I mean, the Kafka is getting really full. Sorry, this is the Kafka workshop, but the architecture styles, there were a few seats left, and the others in May are still seats left about web components. All the workshops have something in common. Almost no external dependencies, always based on standards. So, and this was the last slide. And yeah, there is a meetup. If you would like to join the meetup group, this is where I also announce free events like this one. Yes, set up Jakarta E, and let's now call it, how to call it? Not legacy, enterprise is a good enterprise. And let's see what happens. And enterprise, I'm there. What I custom to, I show you the following, is all my projects look like this. So if you go to POM.xml, usually I have 2 dependencies. This is the test dependency, and this is actually one of my production setup. And in the SD, there is a little bit more. This is for the preview because of JDK features. So the preview is a little bit crazy. Usually there are no such, the plugins are not needed. And I have 1 dependency with the MP client. So this is the setup I used for years. And recently I also added the micro profile because before then I only had this. And this is convenient. I have actually lots of projects. So if the setup is too complicated, it would take me lots of time, to create it. What we have here, we have the POM.xml with 2 dependencies, and the SD has also 2 dependencies. This Jupyter, and this is what I usually do in my projects. It's a very simple setup, and this is the usual application server approach. So now, this is what I would expect for the future. And I would say Helidon is very close, but Micronaut is different for a reason. So now let's start with Micronaut. So now, you probably know that you saw that I use a lot of NetBeans, and today I also use NetBeans, but a little bit differently. So the interesting part is what I would like to do is I would like to start here a project, and here's a Micronaut plugin. And the interesting story is what I'm using today. I'm able to use Apache NetBeans language server, what I also found by accident is also created by Oracle, surprisingly. So behind the scenes, NetBeans is working for me, and it looks like Visual Studio Code, but it's actually NetBeans. And what I also using today, I switched to that, is GraalVM. What I used before was the Microsoft language runtime and Red Hat language runtime. So it's also crazy days, right? We have one Visual Studio Code with 3 independent Java supporters, I would say, Microsoft, Red Hat, and they are almost independent, and Oracle. So I switched to GraalVM and GraalVM extension pack. And with the extension pack, you get support for Micronaut, right? And the Apache language, Apache NetBeans language server. Okay, so now what I would like to do is I would like to create a Micronaut project. Is the latest version. I would like to create a Micronaut application. What Micronaut is, I would like to show you if the project is, when the project is successfully created. So Micronaut application, then yes, Java 11. Now call it Micronaut, yeah, Micronaut, why not? Micronaut hello. This is the project name, and I think this is, of course, Airhacks. Java, of course, no Kotlin, no Groovy. Java is perfect. And now the features. So to demonstrate how it works, I would like to use Jaxores. And I'm just thinking whether let's add the others as well. So then this is JDBC. Data JDBC could be interesting. And Postgres is running. Driver. And this basically it. And of course, I would like to use Maven. No idea about Gradle. And ask me where. So I would like to workspaces, and this is in Junk, of course. This is where. So now I have the Micronaut hello. And what's strange is this is how it looks like. So this is the application, and probably it already, I actually never tried it this way. What happens if I start this? Maven clean package. Then what I know, this is, yeah, this is the test. I think because of the Docker, but who cares about tests? So it works better without tests. You will see in a second. Okay, so now, and if I do this, target hello. So yeah, it says, oh, this is what I wanted to prevent. It tries already to connect with my database, and this was the problem. And yeah, but what I showed you, what I could do right now, I would like to create a Jaxores application with a single injection with Micronaut, and then do it the same again with Helidon and use Micronaut data for it. So this is the basic idea, because I think it's interesting. So I think it's the right moment to explain you what makes Micronaut so different. So the interesting part in Micronaut is, as you can already see, there are lots of dependencies. So this is not as easy as Java, but the reason being is this. So how Micronaut operates, and this is the interesting part, it uses annotation processors. So as you probably know, most of the frameworks how they operate is if you deploy something if you deploy something, if you build, the fetch jar or war or ear, doesn't matter. The framework or the runtime, they are starting, they are searching for annotations using reflection, they get the data and do something with data. So, and the Micronaut is different. So there is no reflection at all. So there is no dynamic behavior at runtime, everything is that simple. So what Micronaut is doing, instead of using reflection, what Micronaut does is Micronaut uses annotation processor. So at build time, the compiler reads the annotations and does something interesting with it. And they are doing crazy things. For instance, what they can do is they can read the annotations, the metadata, that's JPA. So they have now the entire information about the table. Then they can use the metadata, connect, and at build time, use JDBC to connect with the database and verify whether the entity, whether the mapping is right or not. And at runtime, there is no dynamic behavior because the entire code was generated at build time. And I think it's interesting. And what is the outcome? The outcome is that the Micronaut even runs on Android devices. So it's a framework which is it's just generated Java bytecode. This is as simple as you would write something from scratch without any reflection. Okay, so I found this interesting, very interesting idea. And by the way, Graham Rocher, they was not happy with the Spring Boot memory consumption. So this was the driver, to get to recreate what Spring does or what Graham did with Grails without reflection. Okay, so now we have two annotations process. So this is the what happened. I added the JAX-RS extension, and this is the JAX-RS, and we have the Micronaut data processor. And the interesting part is that the JAX-RS annotations are just translated behind the scenes to the proprietary Micronaut annotations. So interesting approach. So now, first, I will have to rename that to JAX-RS application. And yeah, just rename it as well. JAX-RS application. JAX-RS application, and this extends application, and this application comes from, hopefully, I think I have to build it first. Build. It's the JAX-RS application, at least it should be. Come on. And what it says is, what it did? Too late or too early. So what's now the problem? Yeah, now it's the problem that this is not known, which actually can be fixed because exactly. JavaX is application path. And the application path is resources, as this is exactly the same. And now the very first time, what I actually doing, I have a JAX-RS application with a main method inside. Usually all my JAX-RS applications configurations were empty. In some project I saw in code reviews, people try not to add something to it, but usually don't need anything. And there are just very, very rare cases. So, and what I have to start now is the JAX-RS application. And this won't work because I have to tell Micronaut, there is somewhere at the top, that we should use the JAX-RS application. So this is the main class. So now it almost looks like a Whitefly, Payara, Helidon, or whatever project, and but it is a reflection-free Micronaut. So now let's hackathon resource.java. And this hackathon resource, what I disabled is per accident, is my extension with the code generator. So we'll have to, so this is why the class is now empty. But I will have to do it like 1995 class hackathon. Why my IDE behaves so strange? Because I had 3 concurrent Java supports activated at the same time, and it complained, let's say, please use just one. And I deactivated before they show everything, and it was too much. So now I have to type like, with JBuilder 1 in 1996. So resource, but thankfully this is simple. Package, I think the package is, I have to, wait a second. If I search for Java, there is Java extension pack, and this is actually activated. Okay. Then, so I thought it was deactivated, but the package is Airhacks, and the path is MicroStream, to introduce a bit confusion. So now we have it, and then public string hello. So now, as you can see, this is hopefully it is going to be a Micronaut application. Hello, MicroStream, but it looks like JAX-RS, which is what I like, because nothing against familiar APIs. So I have get. I'm a bit confused because I'm now using NetBeans, and it looks a little bit different than usually, because what I use usually is what all you are using if you use Visual Studio Code is Eclipse behind the scenes, actually. So this is a little different behavior. So we have that, and yeah. And now what we also can do, now I can have like the messaging resource for Java. Oh, come on, package, Airhacks. Public class messaging resource, and now I can annotate that, but only actually with singleton, and this is the JavaX inject singleton, so no application scope, no request scope, nothing. And here I could just try, to say public string hello, and just add this there. So this is the idea. I would like to use this there and add local date and time. And then now to see some difference. Okay, this name is a little bit strange, not messaging resource, but actually service, but just keep it. And now I can use add inject from GSR 330 messaging resource, messaging, and plus this messaging. Hello. So with that, it looks almost like 80% of my projects, but this is Micronaut. And so now, of course, nobody's perfect, so they had to use some YAML inside. And the problem was, I think my database is, the database has to be started. Oh, very good. So this is my Postgres database. If you're interested to know in this Postgres, what I did here, I just used my own Docker image. You will find this on Docklands. I can show you that. Docklands. Adam Bean Docklands. And yes, I agree. And somewhere here is Postgres, and this is exactly the image. This is the Docker file I'm using here. So it means I can just restart the Postgres database, and I get a clean state over and over again. So what I know is Airhacks. So this is what I usually do for test setup. And now with a little bit of luck, it could actually build. Would be nice. As you probably saw here, there's lots of going on here. And the reason is because of the code generation or bytecode generation. And if we take a look at target, classes, Airhacks, you see there are lots of classes which were not, which actually I didn't wrote, and they were generated by the annotation processor. So this is the entire idea. And now let's see whether it actually starts. Java -jar target, and this was hello. And it started in 800 milliseconds, and this is the URI. And I should be able to do resources and MicroStream, I think. Unexpected character, which is already actually a JSON parse. Why JSON parse? Try to use JSON. I think that's the problem. And I need this produces media type and text plain. And then there is a command line interface, but today I will just use the command line. Maven clean package, now do this way, and then Java -jar target my hello was it, I think, yes. Okay, so let's see. As you can see, this was the simplest possible MicroStream application, and we have the jar. So let's see what it works. So what I could do is, this actually not needed. Okay. Hello target. So what I like to do is, this is actually the first time. If it doesn't work, is because it's the first time. And this is a decompiler, so I'm curious what happens. So, and let's prove there is no reflection. So what we have here is Airhacks, and we have the hackathon resource, which looks sane. Then we have the, let's see here, definition exec. As you already see, there is some description of executable method. Then, yeah, a lot of stuff. I would say if we had a little bit more time, we will find actually the injection point, I assume, somewhere, has to be here. But you can see this is the bytecode generated by annotation processor. So, and because it's just bytecode, it could be very good optimized, and this is good for performance on CPU. So Marcus, I don't see the chat. If there's any question, then interrupt me, because I'm in full screen right now, so the chat is gone.
Okay.
Cool. So I think enough Helidon, sorry, Micronaut. Now I would like to switch to Micronaut and try, to use the Micronaut data with Micronaut. Micronaut data with Helidon. Okay, so close that and kill Micronaut. So I never used a Micronaut in a project, but I found it interesting, all the concepts, and it should look familiar to Spring Boot developers. I never was in a Spring Boot project, so for me it looked strange. Now with JAX-OS and eject, looks like a familiar environment for me. And back then there was lots of controllers and annotations which I never saw before. So interesting. And I think they are moving, bin validation is also supported, and they will support more and more microprofile stuff, which is very good, because we'll get another great runtime for microprofile, right? And by the way, also, what they also have, if you go to Micronaut.io, there is a project launcher, and you can do the same what I did from Visual Studio Code from the website. It's almost identical. So you can add features here. I could say the features I would like to have, let's say, JAX-RS, and you could, and then you get the zip downloaded. The entire project is downloaded. I never used the website actually. I used the first time with Micronaut, but I prefer the IDE or archetype. So now, if you don't have any questions, then let's start with a even more familiar project. And this is the double hello. So the first thing is Helidon comes with command line utility. And what's great is I thought this is written in Go. And we had chatted with Dimitri on the Airhacks FM podcast again, so I have to show the podcast. So Airhacks FM. And there was already a couple of Helidon episodes, and with Daniel Katz, and I think Daniel was also on your show. Yeah, with if someone is from Czech Republic, should know Kamenitsky encoding. So this is a hot thing. So and then we had with Markus Kett, of course. This is also a known, luminary in the Java space. And then Dmitry Kornilov, for instance. And we had also chat about how Helidon happened, because I was interested, what's the story about behind Helidon. So, and Dmitry told me that this is actually a Java CLI and is cross-compiled, or how to call it, transpiled from Java with GraalVM to native code. So you can just download with curl a single binary and it behaves like Go. So microprofile, of course. So Helidon story. I saw the presentation of Helidon at Java 1, I think was 2 years ago. And I'll show you the page, Helidon.io. And it looks, I mean, extremely nice. And for Oracle, it's really, really nice, right? Crafted page. And 2 years ago, it was not common to have such a page at Oracle, right? Back then, Oracle pages our websites looked like generated with front page, I would say, right? And this was, outstanding. So I was really curious, what is it? But I then became, not that interested, because Helidon again tried, to use their own Java SE API, which I was not familiar with. But I don't know, in one point of time, they introduced microprofile, which made really interesting to me, because then it looked exactly like, Glassfish, Whitefly, whatever. And now it is great microprofile runtime. Okay, so this is SE, you get the SE option, microprofile, the microprofile option. And I would like to use the Bear project, but the Bear is not that Bear. You will see in a second. And I think this is a bug. Project name is HH Hello, stands for Helidon Hello, of course. And this is perfect. And HH Hello. No. So and it still creates the POC, which is interesting. So don't worry. We still have the move. So now HLO. Now do this. So now what's interesting, or what I like at Helidon is, so we have actually one dependency, microprofile, and the other one is Jakarta Activation API, which probably could be somewhere hidden, because I mean, this is not that, it's probably necessary, but not that important like the microprofile. But this basically it, no magic, and there is some Yandex which caches the metadata, and this basically it. And yeah, and this is probably, I don't know, probably you can comment it out, this one with the third-party license. But this is I mean, very, very lean setup, right? And this don't get any larger. Why not? Because because whatever we need is in the microprofile, so we don't have to add 50 microprofile APIs, because usually you need everything from microprofile, or 80% or 70%. Okay, now let's see how it behaves. So we have the grid resource, and this is written strangely, because I think this was by Dimitri. He's one of the spec leads of JSONB, and I assume what he did with it is faster. So this setup is faster, but I never did it in projects. What I usually do is this, probably completely wrong. but it's shorter. And it works in my projects. And so I do this. What I really hate is the constructor injection. So we have to do this, and the config property can be here. And then it will almost look like a project. And I think someone wanted to have a final field. So, and now look at that. It looks like Jakarta E Javaistic project, very lean and very simple. And does this work? Oh, almost emoji what I'm doing. Okay, I would say perfect. What's wrong with that? I don't know. So let's start to build that. I can say Maven clean install. Interesting. Did I destroy here something? Line 18. I don't fancy is 21, but it looks right to me. So strange. This is strange because recently, yesterday or something, I tried actually Helidon. There is, oh, I get chat. Chat. In artifact name, group is this. Let's see. "19". Ah, thank you. So, okay, now I'm back to Java. And you see, I was not very nice to Dimitri and he helps me. So this is the Java community. So now let's see. Now it should work. This would be hard. I wouldn't see this. Interesting. I assume something else. Okay, now it built and then target. Oh, sorry. Java minus jar target. And this is h hello. And it started, but as you can see, what I really like is everything included. So from fault tolerance, health, JAX-RS matrix, OpenAPI, and so forth. And back then we got the entire CDI, and with Micronaut we got I would say 10%, 5% of CDI, and 80% of JAX-RS. And this is everything included, which I really like. So complete different developer experience, right? So now, if you search for Micronaut data Helidon, you get a great article from Thomas. And this was before Christmas. And he wrote the article with lots of dependencies, and I was really lazy. I wanted to try it out, and I say, okay, come on, this is a little bit hard. And so I found a better way to try it. And so what I show you right now is a really fresh. So what I did is I cloned Helidon, and what I found is, so okay, probably Thomas checked this somewhere, and this is true. And and to example. And integrations, and then we are a Micronaut. Micronaut. We will find, I don't know what is the example, at least something which I can copy, because what I'm really lazy and I cannot remember the dependencies. It is data POM, and these are the dependencies I need. You see, this is the persistence, and I think I can just copy we have the micro profile we already had. Persistence is new. Then we get Micronaut runtime, the CDI, then the integration with the data, then transactions, and this is the connection pool called Hikari. So I will use Postgres. I don't have H2. I have H2 somewhere, but I don't use it very often. So now, again, so we actually have only one dependency. So just do that. And then, what else? The interesting part is the Maven compiler plugin is also a little bit more complicated, and the reason being is because now the Micronaut data annotations have to be processed, and this is inside of the Maven POM. So what I would like to do is also use that. No way I can remember this. So probably after a Vue project would work, but this is just a showcase. And yeah, now let's copy this into the plugins. And that's not all. So what we need is, we also need now the properties, because thankfully, I will see in a second, we get microprofile config, which is a very good choice. It's just Java properties. It's not YAML, so it's going to be faster, the integration. So let's do this. And so now, almost done. So what I will have to do is, first, I also need the JDBC driver here. And the JDBC driver is something with Postgres. Dependency, I will try to do it. Dependency. And dependency. Okay, and org Postgres, and then JDBC. I actually forgot about that. So we have to go to the internet and search Maven, Postgres, and hope that it works, JDBC. And this is this, and we need, let's use the most recent one. Hey, just Postgres. Just Postgres. So now, with a little bit of luck, it should work. So now, the JDBC URIs for Postgres, I think it was by Micronaut. So what I will do is, I would like to switch once again to mhello and source main. We should have this, and this is what we need. Back to so, okay, almost. So what we need is, this is almost the same data. So I need this here. It's the database. Oh, I always forget. AirHacksDB was the name. Then this is the driver. Then password is airhex. Username, both are airhex. Okay, and the dialect is Postgres. And with that, I think it could work. And by the way, this is the micro profile property configuration. So YAML-free development so far. So let's say what happens. Let's see what happens. Maven clean install. We shouldn't do clean, but it doesn't hurt, right? Oh, we have the test. Yeah, it is at least successful, but I would like to delete it anyway. Source test Java. Yeah. So nice. So now what we have to do is, at least we will have to create an entity. Session would be hackathon is hackathon Java. Public class hackathon. And then entity. And so now the cool story is I can actually use JSONB with Helidon. So what should work is this name, the hackathon, what's his name? Title, let's say title and description. So we have two public string description, and then we also will need, let's say, long ID, and this is at ID, and this is generated persistence value. So this looks good. I'm curious whether this is working. Let's see. Oh, this looks good. And now yeah, for everything. Oh, it's also working. So now this is actually enough for JPA, but Helidon would like a Helidon Micronaut data would like to have the getters and setters. I think there is an option, to get to read the metadata from the attributes, but this is the default setting. And why this is public? Because I can expose the entity as a JSONB object right away. And what I also need is just a constructor. A requirement by JPA could be also protected. So now, and we have that, and then I can create a hackathon repository. And this package is airhex, and then public class. Usually what happens is it creates the class tab, but I deactivated too much. So you get the worst possible experience now in my talk. Public class hackathon repository. And now it comes on, this is wrong. It has to be an interface. And because it's an interface, I don't have to be public. And this extends now a CRUD repository of the type, it is, what was it, hackathon and long. And this basically it. So with a little bit of luck, could work. And I have to tell that this is a JDBC repository. And then we have here, forgot. Dialect, exactly, dialect. This is the dialect. and Postgres. So what's wrong with that? Looks good, actually. Let's see. Okay, so now with a little bit of luck, I should be able, this is completely superfluous here, but looks more important with the injected config property. So, inject, and I would like to inject the hackathon repository, and this is the repo, and then do something else. I could public void create a post method, and let's do something here that I see that it works. Return is working, and here I can say post, and then say var repo equals new hackathon repo entity hackathon, and what we had title and description. So the title was Helidon plus Micronaut, and description. Actually, forgot the description. Find out today. So there's no description in this case, but we can inject or use the repo, and I think there's method save, which is more or less like merge. So let's try this first, and then maven clean install. Hopefully it works. Ah, perfect. This was the reason. Oh, you see, this is completely wrong, and there is nothing. Package com airhex. Exactly, I got a reasonable suggestion that everyone who watches actually the show should add claps to the article. This is something like you like it, so you have to clap it. So I would expect, how many attendees do we have today? Let's say 3. So we have at the end of the show 40 claps at least, right? So this is what you should do. And can I clap? Oh no, I have to sign with Facebook. This is going to be hard for me. Okay, so let's see. ComEAHEX hackathon. This is ComEAHEX. This is should be ComEAHEX. And now let's see. Should be better. Okay, so Java minus jar target hello. This is what I didn't expect, actually, that it will usually, it is impossible to do it right. But yeah, I'm lucky right now. With help from Dimitri and Helidon team, this is not a big deal to do this. So now curl minus expose HTTP localhost 8080 slash greet, I think is always Helidon. So, and what's the error or whatever? Ah, you see, internal error. And the internal error, what is the internal error? Ah, I know this. Singleton, but it has to be the JSR 330 singleton. Hopefully, is this the problem? So let's see. So what Micronaut only understands singletons, and I believe the integration is only based on the singletons. So I actually had a still. What it says is cannot write read-only property ID. So this was, I deleted too much, but this is already a very good sign. So my hackathon, I will, let's see. Okay. Now let's do it by hand. Set ID. This is a long ID. And this ID equals ID. Yeah. So, and I actually had this clean install and hello Java, right? I define the set ID where. Okay. It worked, but it was too fast. So do it again. Hello.java. Hello.jar, of course. Hey, Dimitri, thank you for attending. Hopefully you learned something about Helidon. So let's see. It's working. So I don't believe that. So therefore, I would like to connect with the database. Airhex. Okay. And navigate, go up. This is the HackDB. And we have the hackathon with one thing, right? So hackathon repository, what I could do right now, and now the magic begins. So I could actually say now hackathon find by this description and string description, and do the same hackathon find by name and add the name. So and now I will have to expose that via the JAX-RS resource. So we have here get and make it usable and try something else. So what we can do with Helidon right now, but not with Micronaut, because Micronaut uses Jackson straight and Helidon supports JSONB. I could actually say this is a hackathon and this is find by name. And then I would like to add path param. And then the template is name. No, this is wrong. It's the path. And path param is here. Path param, name, and then string name. So, and with that, I can now call this repo find by name and say name return. So we have that. And what we can also do is, let's see, in theory, we could do this, hackathon find all. And this is get copy this without that. And I can say here, return this report. I think it's find all. Yeah, this is iterable. Let's see whether it also works with iterable. If not, we probably have to wrap it. So let's do this. So I think with this, we are fine. And it says non-existing property name. Oh, there's another feature of Micronaut. As you can see, it finds at build time that it doesn't match, right? So it already, because it generates the bytecode, it knows they don't match. So this was, of course, on purpose. The problem is I don't have name, I have title. So create resource, this we can keep that. And let's say find by title. This is title. And of course, change it here and say find by title. And then I will have to build it again and start it. So now, still working. Then if we do this, I get the entire array. And now I can search by title. Is Helidon and Micronaut. This won't work. Yes, it works. Wait a sec. I could actually add another one. Is working. And then, of course, if I do this, I should get an error. No, it finds the first one. And then with that, it finds all an array. So I thought it will never work, but it works. So what we learned today is, I would say, opposite philosophies, almost like Helidon and Micronaut, and how well they can play together. And Micronaut, highly optimized framework, which even runs on Android devices. Helidon, highly optimized runtime framework for the clouds, which is extremely fast and performant. And this is, for me, very easy to use because it looks like, my Jakarta micro project the last 20 years, but it's fast and saves fast startup times. Yeah. So now I have 3 questions. So I think I'm done. I could show you something with Helidon. We have one more session next week just about Helidon and micro profiles. So I would rather do this next week. Yeah. So how much of overhead in runtime adds Micronaut CDI and bridge to Helidon? I don't think it's a lot of run. I didn't wrote the bridge, but what I can imagine, what happens behind the scenes, not a lot. If you ask me how much, what I can tell you, I don't know, 30 kilobytes. What do you expect, right? So I don't think this is significant. And you shouldn't forget, we are working here with JPA, with databases, so the bridge doesn't matter really. But yeah. If start a new project today and want to benefit from Micronaut data, why I would use Helidon as base? So I would use Helidon as base right now. And the reason being is the Micronaut is for me completely unfamiliar environment. And Helidon is very familiar because I know Jakarta in micro profile, and lots of projects are like that. So if you are migrating from, let's say, WebLogic, Payara, big WebSphere, you could migrate almost straight to Helidon, but I think it's mission impossible to Micronaut. And Micronaut comes with proprietary API. I had also chatted with Graham Y, and I think in a few weeks I will publish the podcast. And the reason was because they wanted actually to use the full CDI, implement everything is CDI and the standards. but not everything. And they were afraid, if they don't support everything, back then there was different times, they won't be accepted. So they choose to provide their own API. And I'm actually not really interested in learning something proprietary these days. Yeah. So the next one, why would we use Micronaut data over other JPA providers? Micronaut plays already very well with Hibernate support. This is what I don't get. You can use Hibernate. I think JDBC now with Hibernate, so you can absolutely use Hibernate. And why? I mean, this is always the questions about what CU's projects are using. So, for instance, in some projects, if this Oracle shop, I cannot just use something else. And if this is, this Oracle shop, I will choose, Helidon. If my clients have lots of licenses from different companies, I will something different. So this is not the question, what you like the most. This is what your clients will accept. So this is in my projects always sometimes the case. I cannot just freely choose what to use. I can suggest things, but the really nice story is, in MicroProfile in Jakarta I was never in the political discussions because I didn't care. So if my clients had the Red Hat, I suggested Whitefly. If there was a Sun shop back then, I suggested Glassfish or Payara. If there was no IBM shop, Open Liberty. And Oracle now, Helidon, perfect choice. Back then, also Glassfish. WebLogic until 8 was great. So this is the reason. So what I forgot to show you the slides. So my 3 slides to be complete. So this was the session we did, right? This is the podcasts, which is probably interesting because there are lots of discussions like that, and not just because Helidon. I also had an interview with Mark Fleury about how Whitefly was actually created, and so there's the workshops, and they are on hold, and this was the agenda, which actually worked surprisingly well. But I just flipped the 2 points, and this is the most important thing. They're almost sold out, but if you really like, you can still register for the workshops. And this is architecture, and this is Kafka, and the other one is just web, more or less for Java developers without any frameworks. That's all. And Meetup, which we share with Java user group Weiden, right? Is the official name?
It's the Java user group Oberpfalz.
Oberpfalz, not Weiden.
No.
Oberpfalz. How hard is it easy to migrate from Spring to MicroProfile? The question is why to do that. I think in a Spring Boot you should be happy because Spring Boot was sold as the lightweight solution for years, and I don't think there is so much difference. But from Spring to Micronaut shouldn't be hard at all, because my understanding is Micronaut supports the most Spring APIs out of the box. So what you could do is you can now migrate from Spring to Micronaut and then really save and huge amount of memory and performance. So because there's no reflection involved, this Micronaut data is really fast. So if you search for Micronaut data performance, there was a table, I remember, let's say here. So you see 225 Ks operations per second. And this is like twice as fast as Spring Data JPA. And yeah, so it is very fast. So this could be a reason, but I have to admit, this is, just for performance, who cares, right? Usually this is not a problem, I would say. And Marcus, it could be also, the approach, having, method signatures and using annotation processor could be also interesting for MicroStream, because you could also use the information to generate some bytecode. This will help you with Graal. And the approach is, I found really interesting, because you have everything from reflection, but it happens at build time. I find this fascinating, actually, and this is just Java SE. And there's also always a tool called APT, Annotation Processing Tool, is not that known. And then recently, I think starting with JDK 1.5, we got the built-in API for annotation processing.
We use it already in MicroStream.
Oh, you are using annotation processing?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So I was excited, and for you, it's a legacy almost, right? Which IDE do you prefer for Micronaut? What I saw is the Graham Rocher uses IntelliJ, and for me, I don't have the project experience with Micronaut. So, but Visual Studio Code works well if you don't disable too much, what I did, and give a shot to Visual Studio Code. So I really appreciate it because I use these days I also program a lot with web components for the web, and there's Visual Code is just brilliant. And for Java now with the refactorings, it really works well. So today was the worst possible experience. You will see the next week should be better. I will switch back to my usual setup, and it works better because yeah. And recently, the refactorings for JavaScript are like crazy. So you don't even need TypeScript, in my opinion. So you can rename a lot. So I was really surprised.
Adam, it's always great to have you, and I'm super happy to have you next week again. Thank you for joining, everybody. See you then. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.